The Godfather is an all-time classic gangster movie released in 1972, directed by Francis Ford Coppola and starring Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan and Robert Duvall. The film follows Don Vito Corleone, the head of the Corleone crime family, the most powerful of the 5 New York crime families. As he's surrounded by enemies who would like nothing better than to see him out of the picture so they can take his turf, Vito has alliances with powerful politicians and he has police and media people on his payroll. Within his own family, he has the support of 2 loyal capos in Clemenza and Tessio, each with their own separate regimes which can be called upon when necessary. He also has what is his most powerful weapon in Luca Brasi. Luca Brasi is Vito's personal enforcer, a brute of a man who strikes fear into other mobsters in the underworld, and a man whose past has sent shockwaves throughout the mob world. He has a reputation as a savage killer with no remorse, and once murdered 6 men single-handedly to bring an end to the infamous Olive Oil War, which concluded with the Corleones becoming the most powerful family of New York, largely in part thanks to Luca. Luca Brasi even makes Don Corleone uncomfortable, and with good reason. As I mentioned in my video, The Horrifying Origin Story of Luca Brasi, Brasi's depraved behaviour, as shown in Mario Puzo's The Godfather, the novel upon which the film is based, even includes murdering his own newborn child, forcing a midwife to throw the innocent creature into a flaming furnace. He then proceeds to kill the baby's mother before attempting to commit suicide but failing. It's a chilling and sickening story, one that disgusts even the gangsters who are highest up in the food chain, like Don Giuseppe Mariposa. But upon hearing this, in addition to knowing his past as a savage killer, Don Corleone chooses to utilize this depraved individual by recruiting him and using him as a weapon against the oppression of Don Mariposa, who was looking to kill Vito and take over his family's turf and operations. Vito's courting and eventual recruitment of Luca Brasi is very interesting, but something I want to tackle in a separate video, so feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button down below so you don't miss out on future videos. You can also become a patron or channel member to support the channel, where you can get perks such as exclusive videos and early access. And to further explore the fascinating character of Luca Brasi, you can check out other videos I've done on him, such as Luca Brasi's most badass moment and Why did Vito send Luca Brasi to his death, where I discuss the controversial decision made by Vito to have Luca pretend he wanted out of the family, when it was pretty much common knowledge that Luca was fiercely loyal to Vito. Today I wanted to look at a subplot I briefly mentioned in my Luca Brasi Origin Story video, and that is the period where Luca Brasi wanted to kill Tom Hagen. Tom is something of an adopted son of Vito, and the eventual consigliere of the Corleone crime family. He's the straight man of the Corleones, the lawyer, the professional German Irishman with a briefcase and a college education surrounded by sleazy underground figures. He and Luca Brasi seem to be from completely different worlds, and it's bizarre to think of them as even interacting with each other, let alone coming to blows, especially since Luca was so loyal to Vito. Technically, we do actually see them interact in the film, even though it's more or less the two just standing next to each other. Tom escorts Luca to Vito, where Luca thanks him for inviting him to his daughter's wedding, on the day of his daughter's wedding. And in the scene before this, Luca practices the lines he's going to say to Vito, and Michael tells Kay who Luca is, and Tom arrives and greets Michael. If you look carefully in the background, just before Tom enters the shot, Luca rises as if to engage with Tom, but Tom puts a hand out as if to say, "Not now," and walks past him to greet Michael, and Luca just kind of blankly stares at Tom. It's quite goofy, endearing and funny, but then you have to remind yourself that this is the guy who killed his own dad, his girlfriend, and his own kid, and all of a sudden isn't so funny no more. Luca then takes a puff from his cigar while still looking at Tom. He's probably thinking, I should have killed you when I had the chance. So this story is from The Family Corleone, a prequel novel to The Godfather written by Ed Falco and published in 2012. It's written with the Francis Ford Coppola film's interpretations in mind. So, for example, even though there is no mention of Luca Brasi's towering size and figure in the original novel, in The Family Corleone he's described as a huge brute. The book is based on an unpublished screenplay by Mario Puzo for A Godfather Part IV, which would have taken a look at the rise of Vito Corleone as he goes from small-time Don to head of the most powerful crime family. It would also take a look at the rise of Sonny Corleone, Vito's oldest son, and how he entered the family business. And the book is one I've reviewed on the channel. Luca Brasi is a major character in the novel, and Tom Hagen is a supporting one. Luca's vendetta against Tom is one of the main undercurrent subplots, a story which starts near the beginning of the book and ends with Vito's recruitment of Luca, in around about the third quarter of the book. At the time of when this all takes place, Tom has already been taken in by the Corleones and is 18 and he's studying law, and unlike his hot-headed brother Sonny, he never gives the family any grief or reasons to get angry. Luca, meanwhile, is a small-time psychopathic drug-abusing street gang leader, running a feared crew but not yet high-profile enough to be on the radar of the likes of Don Corleone. He is known to Sonny, however, who behind his father's back runs his own gang, performing robberies and taking the goods to Luca Brasi's crew so they can sell them off, and Sonny's name stays clean and thus away from his father's watchful gaze. In fact, Sonny isn't present when the gang goes and delivers the goods to Luca. The story begins with Sonny outside a house at night, his car parked a fair distance away. Inside, a young Irish woman, Kelly O'Rouke, who has recently discovered she's pregnant, who has been disowned by her family, stands by the window, and behind her, an 18 or 19-year-old Tom Hagen emerges, wanting her to move away from the window so no one spots him. Kelly's thoughts are distant and far removed from Tom, who is simply afraid that someone will find out that he isn't at college. Earlier, Tom had been at a club and she had walked up to him and asked him if he wanted to dance in a voice that mesmerized Tom. And after a few drinks, the two were already in bed at Kelly's place. Kelly eventually reveals that she knows Tom is the adopted son of Vito Corleone, and he corrects her by saying he wasn't adopted but did grow up with the Corleones. Things start to get a little awkward. Kelly's demeanor has changed from seductive to vulnerable and now tough, and for Tom, this was all an alien experience. I'm going to skip past unrelated passages, but the book goes on to say, "So, you picked me up because you know something about my family, is that right? What did you think, kid? It was your looks?" Tom asked, "Why would my family have anything to do with this?" "With what?" she asked, the smile on her face genuine, as if she was finally enjoying herself. "With me taking you back here and screwing you," Tom said. "You didn't screw me, kid, I screwed you." "Okay," Tom said, "so whose car did we drive here in? You don't own a car and still live in a place like this." "There you go, kid," she said. "Now you're asking the right questions." "And who buys you the classy threads?" "Bingo," Kelly said. "Now you got it. My boyfriend buys me the clothes. It's his car." "You ought to tell him to put you up in a nicer place than this." Tom looked around as if he were amazed at the tawdriness of the room. "I know." Kelly joined him in appraising the room, as if she shared his amazement. "You believe this rat hole? This is where I've got to live?" "You ought to talk to him," Tom said. "This boyfriend of yours." Kelly didn't seem to hear him. She was still looking over the room, as if seeing for the first time. "He's got to hate me, right?" she asked. "Making me live in a place like this?" "You ought to talk to him," Tom repeated. "Get out," Kelly said. She hopped down from the counter and wrapped herself in a sheet. "Go on," she said. "I'm tired of playing with you." Tom started for the door, where he had hung his cap on a hook. "I hear your family's worth millions," Kelly said, while Tom had his back to her. "Vito Corleone and his gang." "What's this about, Kelly? Why don't you just tell me?" "Go on now. Goodbye, Tom Hagen." Tom leaves, and as he does so, he is gripped by Sonny, who grills him for what he has done, asking repeatedly and incredulously that Tom has no idea how much trouble he is in. He banters in a brotherly way, but is genuinely furious at Tom's actions, and when Tom says he has no idea who the girl's boyfriend is, Sonny tells him, "Luca Brasi." And the book says, Tom says, "Who's Luca Brasi?" "Who's Luca Brasi?" Sonny repeats. "You don't want to know who Luca Brasi is. Luca's a guy who'll yank your arm off and beat you to death with a bloody stump for looking at him the wrong way. I know very tough guys who are scared to death of Luca Brasi, and you just did a number on his girl." The two go into a back and forth for a bit, with Tom saying he doesn't believe Kelly will tell Luca, but Sonny says, "You know, this ain't about you, Tom. Luca finds out and comes after you, then Pop's got to go after him, then we got a war, and all 'cause you can't keep your zipper closed. How do you know she doesn't want to just make him jealous? Didn't you think about that? Maybe she's trying to make him jealous." Kelly clearly has issues. Tom feels she is a little crazy, and Sonny thinks to himself that in the brief moment he saw her, he saw something about her that was angry. And Kelly was an angry, disturbed woman, thrown out by her family, mainly a set of brothers who would eventually go to war with Luca Brasi. Kelly hooks up with Luca, and she's made to stay in poor conditions, which makes her resentful, makes her question Luca's love for her, and makes her want to lash out and get back at him. As you may have guessed, this is the same girl from the original Godfather book that Luca Brasi kills. In the Family Corleone, for what it's worth, though he is obsessive and controlling over her, and with his drug abuse his mind becomes all out of shape as the book goes on, my interpretation is that there was an element of Luca that genuinely loved Kelly, but he was such a fucked up individual it was impossible for him to express it in the right way, and instead he exercises an abusive relationship with her. And when she goes into labour and begs to go to the hospital, he refuses, instead giving her drugs to put her to sleep and then overdosing himself, curling up next to her after she dies and awaiting his own death, saying a few final words before he too goes to sleep. It feels like a retconned version of the original story, because it is, as in the original book they say Luca tried to slice his own throat in prison instead of overdosing on drugs, if I remember correctly, and they outright say Luca murdered the girl, but here it appears Luca killed Kelly by accident. In fact, he comes close to crying when he realizes she is dead, something he hadn't done since childhood, and it's once he realizes she is dead that he then tries to kill himself. This is after he has the baby thrown into the furnace, so it appears that perhaps he wanted the baby dead but wanted Kelly to live. He was also disgusted, and his attitude towards her changed after he found out she slept with Tom. Anyway, Luca and Kelly's complex relationship is a topic for another day, so back to Luca and Tom. And later, after Tom sleeps with Kelly near the beginning of the novel, Sonny's crew, made up of a mix of Irish and Italians like Cork, Angelo and Nico, do a deal with Luca's, who are full of Italians, but Sonny is intentionally not present, so they and Luca are acquainted, but Sonny is not. About 50 pages later in the book, Sonny is with his crew getting drunk in a club when all of a sudden Luca Brasi walks in with Kelly on his arms looking stunning. Luca spots Cork and greets him, and then says, "Who's this mug?" looking at Sonny. "This mug?" Cork said, shoving Sonny. "Just some palooka swiping drinks off us." "Hey," Sonny said. He scratched his head and tried to look drunker than he was. "Who's the gorgeous doll?" said Cork. "What's it to you?" Luca said, and he threw a pretend punch towards Cork's jaw. Kelly introduced herself and said, "I'm Luca's girl." "Lucky dog," Cork said, looking at Luca. Kelly wrapped her arms around Luca's arm and leaned on him, her eyes on Sonny. "Hey," she said, "aren't you a friend of that college boy, Tom somebody?" "What college boy?" Luca asked Kelly, without giving Sonny a chance to respond. "Just a college boy," Kelly said. "Why, Luca? You're not jealous of some college boy, are you? You know I'm your girl." She put her head on his shoulder. Luca said, "I ain't jealous of anybody, Kelly. You know me better than that." "Sure, I know you better than that," Kelly said, hugging his arm tighter. "Well," she asked Sonny, "do you know him?" "Tom somebody?" Sonny said. He dropped one hand into the pocket of his jacket, and he noticed that Luca's eyes followed the motion. "Yeah, I know a college kid named Tom." "You tell him to give me a call," Kelly said. "Tell him I want to hear from him." "Oh yeah?" Luca said. He looked at the boys. "Dames," he said, as if sharing some common knowledge about women. Luca and Kelly leave the table, and the book tells us that Sonny leaves the club, trying not to show his panic but noticing that Luca Brasi is staring at him from across the room. He wonders how dangerous Kelly might be, what her game is, what the consequences of all this will be. And that consequence arrives when, later in the book, Luca and Kelly argue about the place he forces her to live in, him sleeping around, him not being ambitious enough in the crime world and not making enough money, etc., etc. He repeatedly asks about the college boy, picking her up like a puppet by the hair with one hand and threatening her, which prompts her to tell him she is pregnant. He immediately tells her to call a number, which would have her carry out an abortion, but she refuses, so he beats her up, throwing the phone at her and throwing her down the stairs. Kelly yells up at him, "You're a miserable guinea bastard, Luca." And then she pulls herself up to her feet and says, "You want to know about that college boy? He's Tom Hagen. You know who that is?" Luca didn't say anything. He watched her and waited. "That's Vito Corleone's son," she said. "And I let him screw me even after I knew I was carrying your baby. What do you think of that, Luca?" Luca only nodded. "What are you going to do now?" she asked, and she took a step towards him on the stairs. "You know who the Corleones are, don't you, Luca? All your Dago goons kill each other, right? So what are you going to do now? You're going to kill me while I'm carrying your baby? Then you're going to kill Vito Corleone's kid? You're going to go to war with the whole family? He's not Vito's kid, Luca said calmly. But yeah, I'm going to kill him. He started down the stairs and stopped. How do you even know about Vito Corleone and his family? He sounded merely curious, as if all his anger had suddenly gone out of him. Kelly took a step up the stairs. Her hands were balled up into fists. Hooks told me all about the Corleones, she said, and she took another step up, and I did a little looking into them on my own. There was blood on her cheek, and she wiped it away. She didn't know where it came from. Yeah, you did? Luca said, and now suddenly he was amused. You looked into them. That's right, Kelly said. I found out all about them. And you know what I found out? They're not so big you can't take them on, Luca. Who's tougher than you? You could take over their territories and be making millions. Luca said, maybe that's what will have to be, now you've put me in the position of having to kill one of Vito's kids. And what about me? Kelly asked, her voice softening a little, a touch of fear in it now. You gonna kill me too? Nah, Luca said. I'm not gonna kill you. He started down the stairs, his movements slow and lumbering, as if the weight of his huge body was pulling him down. But I am going to give you a beating you won't forget. Go ahead, Kelly said. What do I care? What do I care about anything? She thrust her chin out to Luca. She climbed another step and waited for him. And so, since this video threatens to be over half an hour long if I cover the entire saga in great detail as I want to, I'm going to end it there and leave the second half of the story for another video. Stay tuned, as it will probably be out in a couple of days, where we will see the repercussions and consequences of the events that Luca Brasi, Kelly and Tom find themselves in, now that Luca wants to murder Tom. We'll also see Don Vito's reaction to the entire affair, as he becomes involved in the story, and we'll find out how all this concludes. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on part 2 of When Luca Brasi Tried to Kill Tom Hagen. Thanks for watching.